The morning air in the cul-de-sac was calm, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass and the chirp of sparrows perched on power lines. That calm shattered with two simultaneous, high-pitched voices tearing through the suburban stillness. Christina and Crystal stood shoulder to shoulder in the middle of my driveway, their faces red with fury, their arms jabbing toward me as if their fingers could pierce through my composure. I leaned against the doorframe of my gray house, coffee mug in hand, a light breeze stirring the open button-up shirt I wore over a plain white tee. I didn't move. I didn't need to. Their voices carried the whole spectacle for the neighborhood. "You think this is funny?" Christina barked, her purple blouse straining at the seams as she leaned forward, almost daring me to laugh. "You're humiliating us in front of everyone." Crystal, a few years older and slightly heavier, chimed in with equal venom. Her teal blouse fluttered as she wagged her hand in exaggerated outrage. "People are talking about us, because of you. This isn't just some prank, it's harassment." I sipped my coffee, let the steam curl past my beard, and let their words crash against me like waves breaking against stone. Across the street, blinds shifted. A couple of neighbors stood on their lawns pretending to trim hedges or fetch mail they had already picked up hours ago. The entire block had tuned in to this episode, and the sisters didn't even realize they were providing live entertainment. "You named your Wi-Fi Karen Sisters / Snoop on neighbors." Christina shrieked, her voice cracking. Her sister doubled down. "That's slander. Everyone knows it's about us." I tilted my head, finally allowing a small smile to cut across my face. "Well," I said, calm as the morning breeze, "maybe not everyone would have known if you hadn't just announced it to the whole street." For a heartbeat, silence. The kind of silence where you could hear the squeak of a bike chain down the block. Then the sisters exploded again, the sound so shrill that a dog barked 2 houses away. "You'll hear from the HOA," Crystal threatened, her skirt swishing as she pointed her finger toward my chest. I shrugged. "Add it to the list. I'll be here." That was the truth. I had lived in this house for 6 years, long enough to know the rhythm of the neighborhood, long enough to know who thrived on peace and who thrived on conflict. Christina and Crystal had only been here for 18 months, but in that time they had filed complaints about everything from misplaced recycling bins to wind chimes that apparently rang too melodically. They needed a battlefield, and the HOA was their weapon of choice. 2 days later, a letter appeared taped to my door. "Grass too long. Trash cans visible. Porch light bulb too dim." Each violation came with a fine, each fine neatly signed off by the HOA board president, a man I'd never once seen leave his home without Christina shadowing him at meetings. I crumpled the letter, tossed it in the recycling bin, and walked back inside. That evening, I renamed my Wi-Fi network. The next morning, as the sisters strutted down the street in matching joggers, their eyes darted toward my house like searchlights. Within minutes, I heard the knock. HOA / _clown show. Christina shouted before I even opened the door. Her voice echoed against the siding. I leaned against the frame again, coffee mug in hand like clockwork. Creative, isn't it? Rolls off the tongue. Crystal nearly choked on her outrage. "You can't keep doing this. It's harassment. It's targeted. It's personal." I took a slow sip. "Funny. My Wi-Fi password is personal too. But you don't see me complaining when yours is still I love cats 123. The corner of Christina's lip twitched. For a split second, I saw the crack in their armor. They weren't used to pushback. They thrived on intimidation, on wearing people down until compliance felt easier than resistance. But me? I had patience. And patience is lethal against people who thrive on drama. The next week became a quiet war. Christina and Crystal made it their mission to poison the well. They approached neighbors in their driveways, whispering conspiracies about me. They stopped delivery drivers and warned them about the unstable man at number 48. They even knocked on my door late at night just to leave when I opened it, grinning with malicious satisfaction. I adjusted my Wi-Fi name again. This time, Crystal still single. By morning, 3 neighbors had already screenshotted it and sent it around in the community group chat. I didn't post a thing. I didn't need to. The sisters supplied the drama. I just supplied the headline. They were livid. I could hear them arguing with each other from across the street, voices carrying into the night. One insisted on calling the police. The other muttered something about lawsuits. I imagined their kitchen table covered in printed screenshots, each network name circled in red marker like evidence in a crime drama. Still, they never stopped. If anything, they escalated. Cars slowed when they passed my house, drivers rolling down windows to wave or smirk, clearly in on the joke. The sisters burned hotter with every passing day, their dignity eroding in real time. One afternoon, I found them waiting in my driveway, arms crossed. Christina's cheeks flushed as she spit the words at me. This is defamation. You are destroying our reputation in this community. Crystal added, we'll sue. We'll take you to court if that's what it takes. For the first time, I set my mug down on the porch railing and met their eyes directly. Then I'll see you in court, I said, my voice steady, low, final. They flinched, as though they hadn't expected me to call their bluff. But I wasn't bluffing. They needed an audience, and the courtroom would give them one. The only difference? In court, their performance wouldn't be judged by neighbors gossiping from behind blinds. It would be judged by the law, and by laughter they wouldn't control. The sisters spun on their heels, storming off toward their house as if marching to war. Their shouts carried down the block, promises of lawsuits and justice. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, some openly chuckling now. The spectacle had grown beyond gossip. It had become a neighborhood event. I picked up my mug again, still warm in my hand, and looked out across the quiet street. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass again, deceptively peaceful. But peace never lasts long when Karens think they're cornered. They were preparing their next move, and I knew it would come soon. When it did, I would be ready. And as the day slipped into evening, I opened my laptop and typed in a new Wi-Fi name. This one was short, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Karen Sisters __ courtbound. By the time the signal spread across the neighborhood, their fate was sealed. The trap wasn't set with wires or bait, it was set with pride. And soon, pride would drive them straight into their own downfall. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and floor polish, the kind of scent that clung to the walls like memory. Sunlight filtered through high windows, scattering dust in golden beams across the rows of benches where neighbors had gathered, curiosity pulling them out of their daily routines. It wasn't every day that two women tried to sue a man over a Wi-Fi name. Yet here we were, the seats filling with familiar faces from my street, all waiting to see the showdown. I sat at the defendant's table, calm, hands folded in front of me. The sisters entered with the theatricality of stage performers, their shoes clacking against the tile like drumbeats announcing their arrival. Christina wore her purple blouse again, pressed stiff as armor, her chin jutting upward with defiance. Crystal followed close behind in her teal blouse and patterned skirt, her expression already fixed in the smug satisfaction of someone convinced they had already won. They took their seats, whispering to each other, glaring in my direction. Their lawyer, a thin man with tired eyes and a suit that looked a size too large, shuffled papers nervously. I almost pitied him. He hadn't signed up to defend reality television stars in a courtroom, but that was exactly what his clients were determined to be. The bailiff called for order, and the judge entered. She was a woman in her 60s, gray hair pinned tightly back, her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. The gavel struck once, and the sound echoed through the room, silencing the murmurs. Christina rose first, invited to speak by her attorney. She took the stand like it was her throne, smoothing her blouse as she positioned herself before the jury. She inhaled deeply, then let her voice spill into the room, trembling with righteous fury. "This man has ruined our lives," she declared, jabbing a finger in my direction. "Every time we walk down the street, people smirk. They laugh. They whisper. And why? Because of him. Because he thinks it's funny to humiliate us publicly, using his Wi-Fi name to target us in the cruelest way." Gasps whispered through the benches. Not gasps of shock, but of amusement poorly disguised. I caught one neighbor covering his mouth with his hand, shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. Christina didn't notice. She continued, her voice rising. I can't sleep at night knowing that our names are being mocked, that our character is being dragged through the mud. We are women of standing in our community, and his malicious behavior has turned us into objects of ridicule. Crystal stood suddenly, unable to contain herself, her voice shrill. Everyone calls us Karens now. Everyone. Do you know how demeaning that is? People treat us like a joke, like we're villains in our own neighborhood. The judge raised an eyebrow. You will have your turn, Ms. Crystal. Sit down. Crystal obeyed, but her lips continued to move silently, muttering about injustice. Christina pressed on, wiping an imaginary tear from the corner of her eye. We're here today because we believe in the power of the law to restore our dignity. We're here because this man's actions are not only petty, they're defamatory. He should be held accountable. Her lawyer finally rose, shuffling his papers, trying to steer the chaos into something resembling coherence. Your Honor, the Wi-Fi names in question were clearly designed to target my client specifically. They have endured emotional distress, humiliation, and reputational harm. This is a case of harassment, plain and simple. He sat quickly, relief flashing across his face, as though surviving that speech was victory enough. The judge's eyes shifted to me. Defense. My attorney, a calm man with a neatly trimmed beard and a suit that fit perfectly, stood. He spoke with the kind of measured confidence that only comes from knowing you already hold the winning hand. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what my client's neighbors have conveniently forgotten is that Wi-Fi names are not billboards. They are not published in newspapers. They are private identifiers, visible only to those who search for a connection. The claim of defamation requires that false statements be presented as fact to the public. This is satire. This is humor. And humor, however unflattering, is not against the law. He paused, letting the words sink in. Then he reached into his briefcase and withdrew a stack of papers. He laid them on the evidence table with deliberate weight, each page bound neatly. I would like to present Exhibit A, he said, distributing copies to the judge and jury. A compilation of Wi-Fi names gathered from public spaces across the city. Allow me to read a few. FBI /_surveillance ban. Mom used this one, Chewbacca Wi-Fi, and my personal favorite, Nacho Wi-Fi. These names exist everywhere, often poking fun at neighbors, friends, or situations. They are jokes. Nothing more. The first chuckle escaped from the jury box. Another followed. The judge cleared her throat, lips twitching as though she was suppressing a grin. My attorney continued, unhurried. The plaintiffs claim irreparable harm, yet the only evidence they offer is their own assumption that these names must refer to them. If they see themselves in the word Karen, that is not my client's doing. That is their own insecurity speaking louder than any Wi-Fi signal ever could. The laughter grew. A ripple swept across the courtroom, muffled at first, then louder. Neighbors shifted in their seats, unable to contain the smirks any longer. Even the bailiff, stoic as a statue, coughed into his hand to hide a smile. Christina's face flushed crimson. She banged her fist on the table. This isn't a joke. We are being mocked. The judge rapped her gavel sharply. Order. But even her voice cracked slightly, betraying her struggle to remain serious. Crystal shot to her feet again. This is exactly what we mean. Everyone laughs at us because of him. Look around. Her words only fanned the flames. The jury chuckled openly now, the absurdity of the case hanging thick in the air. My attorney leaned slightly toward the bench, lowering his voice so that the room quieted to hear. Your Honor, the law is not here to protect egos. It is here to protect rights. And my client's right to name his Wi-Fi whatever he chooses is protected speech. Unless, of course, we plan to legislate against every joke ever told. Silence followed, heavy and decisive. The judge tapped her gavel once more, though this time more gently. She glanced between the sisters, who were both trembling with rage, and then back at the jury, who avoided her gaze with the strained composure of people moments away from laughter. The case was unraveling before everyone's eyes. The sisters had wanted attention, and they had it. But attention was a fire they could not control, and now it was spreading, burning away whatever dignity they thought they still held. The judge exhaled slowly, pinching the bridge of her nose. "We will reconvene after a short recess," she announced. "Court is adjourned for now." The gavel struck again, echoing through the room like a drumroll. Christina and Crystal huddled together, whispering furiously, their eyes darting toward me with promises of vengeance, not yet spent. Around us, neighbors murmured with delight, some already reaching for their phones to type messages that would no doubt ripple across the neighborhood by nightfall. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded, calm as ever. The sisters had wanted a stage. They had gotten one. But the performance was slipping from their control, the audience turning against them with every passing second. The courtroom filled again after recess, a low hum of anticipation running through the benches like electricity before a storm. Neighbors leaned forward, whispering behind hands, eyes darting between the sisters and me as if waiting for a final act in a play they had been following for weeks. Christina and Crystal returned to their seats stiff-backed and trembling, their faces set with a kind of forced confidence that cracked under scrutiny. They thought the judge's momentary break might have softened the blow. They were wrong. The gavel struck once more, pulling silence over the room. The judge's expression had hardened during the recess. Her patience thinned to a razor's edge. She gestured for Crystal to take a stand, and the older sister pushed herself up with a huff, arranging her skirt before settling into the chair. She locked her eyes on the jury, her voice quivering as she launched into her testimony. "This isn't just about Wi-Fi names," she began, her hands gripping the sides of the stand. "This is about respect, about dignity. We've been turned into a laughingstock in our own neighborhood. Children point at us. Adults smirk when we pass. All because of that man." She pointed her finger at me like a dagger. "He has destroyed our peace of mind. Every day we are mocked. Do you know what that feels like? To be branded with a word like Karen? To have your name dragged through the mud." The jury shifted uncomfortably, though not out of sympathy. They had heard enough. Crystal's words carried the desperation of someone clutching for control long since lost. Her lawyer looked down at his notes, avoiding her gaze, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. When my attorney rose, he didn't bother with dramatics. His calm voice carried a weight that no theatrics could match. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, pacing slowly. "We've heard about humiliation. We've heard about reputations. But what we have not heard is evidence. Not one neighbor has testified that they believe these Wi-Fi names were anything more than harmless jokes. Not one shred of proof has been offered that my client intended anything beyond humor. Instead, what we see here are two individuals so consumed by their own pride that they've mistaken laughter for persecution." He paused, then held up a fresh sheet of paper. Exhibit B. A snapshot of the plaintiff's own online posts. Here we see them commenting in the neighborhood Facebook group, accusing half a dozen families of petty infractions, painting their homes the wrong shade, leaving holiday decorations up too long, questioning parenting choices. They publicly shamed others, and yet they cry defamation when faced with a Wi-Fi joke. The effect was immediate. Murmurs rose, a wave of recognition passing through the benches. Neighbors remembered. They had felt the sting of those posts, the sisters' relentless need to police everyone else's lives. The jury's eyes sharpened, the sisters' faces drained of color. The judge leaned forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "Enough. I have heard all I need to hear." Christina lurched to her feet, desperate. "Your Honor, you can't dismiss this. He made us into villains. He ruined us." The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Silence. The room froze. The judge straightened, her expression unflinching. "This court finds the plaintiff's claims without merit. The defendant is not guilty of harassment or defamation. Furthermore, this lawsuit constitutes a misuse of the court's time and resources. As such, the plaintiffs, Christina and Crystal, are ordered to pay the defendant's legal fees in full. Gasps erupted, followed by laughter, this time unrestrained, spilling through the room like a tide. The sisters stood frozen, mouths agape, faces crimson with humiliation. The judge struck the gavel one last time. Case dismissed. What followed was chaos, though not the kind the sisters had planned. Neighbors clapped, some even cheered, their relief palpable. The courtroom became a theater of celebration, the sisters trapped in the spotlight they had begged for. Christina's hands shook as she gathered her purse, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. Crystal muttered curses under her breath, tears threatening to spill. They stormed out, heads low, but the laughter followed them down the hallway, echoing through marble corridors. Their dignity had been stripped clean, not by cruelty, but by their own arrogance. They had walked into the courthouse seeking revenge and walked out branded by their own folly. When I stepped outside, the air tasted different, sharper, freer. Neighbors approached me, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, thanking me for standing up where others had stayed silent. Phones flashed as screenshots of the ruling, paired with jokes about Wi-Fi, spread across the neighborhood chat groups. By evening, the story was already viral, spinning through social media like wildfire. That night, I sat on my porch with my usual cup of coffee, the sky painted in streaks of orange and violet. My laptop rested on the table beside me, the router humming quietly. I changed the Wi-Fi name again, this time to something simple, precise, undeniable. Karen Sisters _ lost in court. The name lit up instantly across devices in every house nearby. Within minutes, messages pinged through the neighborhood group. Laughing emojis, celebratory memes, snapshots of the courtroom door. For days, the sisters avoided leaving their home. Curtains stayed drawn, cars remained parked, their presence in the community reduced to whispers behind closed windows. Their authority in the HOA evaporated overnight. The board, humiliated by their stunt, quietly dropped every fine and citation they had weaponized against me. Their power was gone, stripped clean by the very court they had hoped would punish me. But karma has a way of echoing long after the gavel falls. Weeks later, I saw Christina at the grocery store, shoulders hunched, eyes darting nervously. A pair of teenagers in the next aisle whispered, then burst into laughter. She spun on her heel and fled, leaving her cart behind. Crystal fared no better. I caught sight of her at the mailbox, face pale, trembling as she shoved letters inside and darted back indoors. Their world had shrunk to the walls of their home, a prison built from their own pride. Back on my porch, I watched the neighborhood settle into its quiet rhythm once more. Laughter returned, but it was light now, harmless, no longer weaponized. My Wi-Fi signal pulsed through the air, connecting phones, laptops, and tablets across the block. One final update to the network name felt fitting, the perfect epilogue. Public court clowns. When the name appeared, the street buzzed with delight. Screenshots flew again, the story spreading beyond the neighborhood, picked up by distant relatives and strangers who marveled at the absurdity. What had started as petty harassment had ended in poetic justice, a reminder that arrogance always leaves the loudest signal. I leaned back, sipping my coffee, watching the sun dip below the rooftops. The war was over, the victory decisive, but the lesson lingered in the air as tangible as the Wi-Fi waves connecting us all. Christina and Crystal had tried to make me the villain. Instead, they had broadcast their own downfall, stronger than any signal I could ever transmit.